But yeah, thank you for having me on. I really love it, and it's a pleasure to be
Here
on
we
your
are.
lovely show. All right.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to my new show, Out of Nowhere, where we talk about the paranormal, the aliens, everything goes on this show. Well, my guest today is Ronald Kinsella. Ron is an artist, illustrator, and author. He has written numerous books, including science fiction for the mainstream media, some of which are illustrated by himself. Can we please welcome Ronald to the show? Hello
Hello.
there.
Hello, Bob. All right. Thank you for having me on again. As always, it's a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
And when I'm looking back, it's about a year ago since you were last on.
Yeah, actually, I haven't done
May
many
the,
radio shows
I think it was May the
recently.
10th, 2023, you last on the show.
Was it really? My goodness, it's yeah. I haven't done many at all. In fact, I think nearly a year. I've taken a step back slightly, apart from the Wonderful Awakening conference I went to with Steve Mira and the team and Christopher Turner. They all organised with Paul Sinclair Blessing.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the only thing I've really done. I've taken a little step back. I think sometimes it's nice to have a little break. You move back and concentrate on other projects. You know, it's not a bad thing to have a break. You know, you need breathing space. You know, especially with this topic, especially with the topic.
What I want to ask you about is, how did it all start for you? How you got into UFOs?
Well, I saw one, and not just one, a number of them. I think a lot of people who know me are aware of the fact that Philip and I saw one of these orbs. It's the size of a football, a silver sphere that arced over our grandmother's garden back in 1982, and it traversed towards us. It was controlled. It wasn't a balloon, because the first thing that came to mind was it was a balloon. It was silver, and it arrived over our heads. And as it hung there, it was level with the second bedroom window of a conventional house, you know, like a conventional window, the more or less the height of the second bedroom window. It was over Grandma's head. And I said to her, "Look at that." You know, and she said, "Oh, look, the fairies have come to take a closer look." I wasn't frightened by it.
No.
I was just awed. It was, as I said it again and again, it's like something from Doctor Who. The old Doctor Who, not the new ones. We won't go down that road.
Yeah.
That's not Doctor Who at all. That's nonsense. But it was something like Doctor Who, and it reminded me of some kind of electronic eye. It was definitely watching us. I felt it was observing us. It wasn't, you know, there was no threat from it at all. And then it went up, vertical, went straight up, and then disappeared. And that's 1982. I have had some people state that, oh, it's military. Now, bearing in mind that where Grandma and Grandad lived in Tatchbrook Road, Middlesex, Grandad worked for KLM, the Dutch company. He was a baggage packer. I think he dealt with the aircraft, loaded them up. I believe that's what he did. He worked with computers there as well. And people say, oh, it's, you know, it's an aerial phenomena from Heathrow, or it's military. It was not. Yeah. The military did not have anti-gravity mechanisms then, and they certainly, I don't believe, have it now. They haven't got any anti-gravity mechanisms at all. This is the point I will make, because researching this, I have found that many people have stated that, let's just take, for example, the triangular ships, the popular Belgium UFO wage that happened in the 1990s, I believe. It was documented on Unsolved Mysteries with the wonderful Robert Stack. I remember seeing it in the 1990s. I wasn't very into UFOs then. We had seen them, but, you know, I wasn't going to publish anything. I didn't know anyone then. I'm glad now that I do know people who are very brave to come out with it and encourage me. But it was them, and people state they're military. They're not military at all. Let's just put into effect this nonsense, and people will argue straight away. They'll say you're wrong, but there's no proof. We have got nothing. We've got no proof. There's nothing. We have got nothing. There's perhaps echoes, or as the case in Kathleen Marden's auntie and uncle, Betty and Barney Hill, they did have evidence in the form of a map, a star map. Marjorie Fisher produced this map, and I believe they were taken by extraterrestrials, as we would call them, because it was so incredibly massive. Even though they kept it quiet, it all came out. But, that kind of thing, that's anti-gravity. These kind of things would have anti-gravity, but we wouldn't, because it's rather like I suggested, if we had recovered a piece of their technology, right? And the people say we've back-engineered it. Well, I made this quite clear in the Awakening team, to the Awakening team and to the people I spoke to there, that it's rather like us handing, and it is, the Victorians one of our modern day mobile phones and asking them to replicate it. This is an example, a legitimate example. They would try, but they could never do it. They couldn't. So how on earth do they expect us to just quickly whip up some kind of technology from an alien ship, from mechanisms, ultimately of other worlds or dimensions, within 30, 40 years? It cannot be done. Using our own technology, would there be comparisons? Would they use copper? Would they use metal? Would they use nuclear fusion? I doubt it. So to me, that is nonsense. So how it all started was seeing one of these very odd-looking things. And I would attribute that to being similar to the Foo Fighters that were widely reported during the Second World War. The Foo Fighters, not the group, not the pop group, but the actual, they tail planes and they would watch or observe. They didn't hurt anyone, but they'd tell and interact during battles or reconnaissance missions or things like that. So it reminded me perhaps of one of those, although it wasn't lit up, it wasn't illuminated. So this pushed me into the UFO field, not just immediately, because I saw some very strange things after that. We won't go into that. The next part we won't, because I've done that to death. But I've seen some very strange things. So this is what pushed me into it much later in life. Indeed, if it had not been for the internet and the wonderful people who have supported me, I would never have come out with this, never. But I gained courage and strength like the others because it was becoming more acceptable. We'll put it conservatively, acceptable to a degree that people would actually listen or,
We've got the first question of the evening for you, Ronnie. Hi, Ronnie. How big was the silver ball? I had one in my house during the lockdown period. It was the size of a marble and silver. When it departed, it moved so fast.
Yeah, I mean, it was the size of a football. So I've heard this of cases of the silver balls. They don't have to be that size; they're tiny. Indeed, a member of family of ours, I shan't name him to protect his integrity. He wishes it. He was pursued by a light, perhaps just a bit bigger than that. He saw it. I think it was red, or I can't remember what color it was, but it pursued him. He was horrified by it. So yes, it's interesting. Thank you. That's interesting. The size of a marble. Well, yes, I think it would make sense if there was an intelligence amongst us, which I believe there is, perhaps a multitude of them, that they would use these things to observe us or watch. They have no interest in interacting by way of bringing peace to the earth. That's not going to happen. They've never done it. These promises that you read of these stories of these federation people keep harping on about, saying, I've heard some say that if there's a nuclear war, they'll stop it. They will not. It's a fallacy. Nonsense. To me, anyway. I don't want to tread on anyone's toes here, but this is my own opinion. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I don't believe that.
Yeah. So there's a bit about the paranormal and some things what have been happening to you recently.
Yeah, I mean, it's really weird because when I looked into, before I got involved in the UFOs, I inadvertently got involved with spiritualism without even realizing it. I went to see a medium. And even then, after seeing the UFOs and that, I question everything. But I went to see, because a relative of mine had died. And my brother went to see a medium, and I was taking the mickey out of him, poking fun, saying the gypsies, crossed my palm with silver and all that. I had a slap in the face when I saw her. I had a slap in the face. I deserved it because she brought through incredible evidence that no one could know. No one on this planet would know, bar from me. And she just plucked it out just like that. It wasn't wishy-washy nonsense like the show on TV. Of course, that's fossilized ideologies, Victorian principles they keep harping on about, whereas these mediums are quite matter-of-factly. So she brought through this evidence. And it led to the UFOs because she saw them as well. She said, you've had interactions with them. She wasn't interested in them. It's like they were just a sidekick.
Yeah.
She wasn't even interested in them. It was more about my spiritual growth, but it pushed me into the spiritual. And she said I was psychic. I'm not. I don't think I am, because I tried. We pursued everything. This opened up a whole plethora of alternate science, as we call them, like a remote viewing. We tried. I could get nothing through. We sat in circle. I sat in circle for a number of years. I could get absolutely nothing through. For years I sat there. And I got drunk once because before I went to see this old medium, I got drunk. Oh, yeah. They said you need to relax. So I thought, well, I quite like then a nice beer and that. So I actually downed a bottle of red wine and had some beer. And I went, that's all right. It's very merry. And she could smell the alcohol on my breath. And I sat down, and all I ever did was just laugh, because all I could see through the dim light when we were meditating, this lovely old lady with her teeth sticking out was meditating, going, well, that absolutely complete. And she then said afterwards, what was so funny, Ronald? And I had to fib. I don't fib at all. But I said, well, there's a belly dancer. It just humoured me. I thought, I'm not doing that again, because I got nothing. But a number of years later, it's only happened 3 or 4 times, I think. I began to see visions of the future without me asking for it, without me knowing it. The first one was with a chap called William, lovely chap. In New York, we were interviewing him because he was into the UFOs. So I wanted to talk to him. It's a wonderful work, it's a lovely chap.
Yeah.
With this bent, like this interdimensional approach he's taken, which is fascinating. People write others off because of their views. You must never do that. It's a dangerous thing. I know we have opinions. I'm very resolute on mine, but individually they're entitled to what they do. So I was talking to William. I couldn't see him. There was no video link. It was just audio. I must say the line was crisp to New York. It's fantastic. And I kept seeing, as I was talking to him, and this is very interesting. I kept seeing this sand. All this sand. Now, how I saw it was like, it's not daydreaming. It's like you just see it. It's like there. And it's an impression as well. I didn't smell anything. I couldn't hear anything. It's an impression of sand. It was like the Sahara Desert. Now, I would have passed that up, but I kept seeing it again and again. And I said, William, this was a Sunday night. I said, William, I'm sorry, I've got to just ask you something. I said, I'm seeing all this sand. Does it mean anything to you? Because it must have signified something for me, because it wouldn't go, this blasted sand. No. I said, but I'm seeing all this sand everywhere. No. Well, after the radio show was finished, it was great to chat with him, the lovely William. I had some emails from him and some pictures. He said, you're never going to believe this. He said, for the first time ever, I've worked with absolute miles of sand. And I thought afterwards, my God, I've seen a piece of the future, but I didn't know it at the time. Now, this completely contradicts my views on time travel. You see, this is where it gets really complicated, because I dismiss time travel as a fallacy. There is something, but it's not time. It cannot be time. And this will shatter many opinions again, because people, they sway more towards Doctor Who, the TARDIS, or the famous H.G. Wells time machine. Oh, it can be done. We can travel through time. You can't do it. It cannot be done. It's like when I saw these scientists on TV and professors time travel. They keep mentioning time as an equation of the universe. It has nothing to do with time, because for the one simple, logical, basic fact, time is a man-made construct. It is not physical. It is merely a calculation. We're not dealing with time. We're dealing with something else. I'm not saying it cannot be achieved, not in the way we think anyway, but there is a way around it. And I mentioned this, I'm going to plug it, in this book here I've written, right? It's Illusions. It comes out on July the 1st. Time travel is absolutely impossible. Now, I will tell you this, but as I said, there's something else. But I will tell you, that shattered, so much for me, because when I actually looked into this, because I would love to go back. I think a lot of us would love to escape this time now, and I absolutely sympathize with them. But time cannot be changed. They keep talking about this time equation. Oh, Einstein's used it. No, we have to. If we remove time from the equation, we might make some gain. And they'll say, "Who are you?" Me, like you're little so and so. Think you're not a scientist, but it's logical. This whole book is based on logic. And if you don't have logic, my God, what do you have? We're not going to go down the annals of science fiction with time travel, because it's not possible. And another thing I found out, that these photographs and films, the Charlie Chaplin, the famous Charlie Chaplin one with the woman talking into something, that could be the hearing aid. It's not a man dressed up as a woman. I've watched this hundreds of times. They had hearing aids then, and they did have batteries as well. She could be testing it out or things like that. There are so many I've called out as fake, and there's reason behind it as well. Some are unusual, yes, but that's the way it is. But there's no such thing as time travel. There is something else, though. I wonder who's going to attack me for that.
There's another question here for Ronnie. Ronnie, as a digital creator, who most inspired you with your work? Is it Ray Harryhausen?
Ray Harryhausen, yes, he's one of them. And Boris Vallejo and Julie Bell. Actually, Boris and Julie live in Pennsylvania, I believe. I've heard from them. They endorse one of our books, Masters of Art. But Ray Harryhausen as well. Yes, we've heard from his secretary. We sent a letter to Ray Harryhausen before he passed, sadly, with a copy of one of our science fiction books, telling him that he inspired us. And he informed his secretary to write back and say that he's very touched by that. So it was Ray Harryhausen, and we had a little bit of magic from the man himself. We actually heard from him, although not directly. It was from his secretary, but he was pleased, and he kept the book. He was a gentleman. And of course, Valley of Gwangi. I love Valley of Gwangi, Ray Harryhausen's. And they talk about they're talking about Ray for a minute. They talk about the Sinbad films, and everyone keeps saying, "Oh, it's my favourite was Jason and the Argonauts." Mine wasn't. I tell you what, mine was The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad with the dragon in. I tell you, that was fantastic. I've watched that. I'm going to tell you now, I've watched it over 100 times before I even heard from Ray Harryhausen. I was a kid and I watched that over and over and over. It wasn't Jason and the Argonauts. For me, it was The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. Is something beautiful. I saw Korra the magician in that. Something beautiful about that. So yes, it was Ray Harryhausen and Boris Vallejo and Julie Bell, who have been absolutely wonderful to both myself and Philip. And it goes to show that some people they don't wear crowns. They are lovely, and they encourage the younger generation the younger.
Yeah, Rebecca's asking, "Hi, Ronnie, has Philip ever given you a message from the other side?"
Yes, he has. It's hard because him being a psychic and being a failed psychic, I am. Miserably failed. We're too close. I think if you're close to someone, but he has brought through. The medium I saw, she was incredible. Her name was Pearl. She was amazing. This was 25 years ago. Right, and she would just sit there and she'd bring things through. Like there was one time when she was, she goes into a kind of trance. So she's looking ahead. I know Pearl, how she does it. She doesn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
There's reason behind it, and I understand why. She was incredible. Right, so she's sitting there and she's saying, Ronnie, she said, my goodness, I've just gone back to Egypt in the time of the pharaohs, you are Anubis. She said, you're dressed up. Basically, he wore a jackal head dog. It was a ceremony,
Right.
I believe. The keeper of the dead, I believe he is, Anubis. And she said, you are him. Now, it's interesting because I developed a mechanical dog with the big ears, and he looks
You did?
Egyptian. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
Egyptian. So she said, where do you think he came from? These are echoes of your past. This is echoes of you. You're bringing it through. The dog is a jackal. And she said, you're panicking. Now, this is like me. Because she said the pharaoh or whatever pharaoh it was ticked off. I don't know what about. And I was going to get it in the neck. Hopefully,
Yes.
not totally. But she just brought these things through. She was amazing. This is when she came out afterwards, developed friendship, and we did workshops together. We used the Ouija board. I wouldn't recommend it. I would not recommend it unless you use it sensibly.
Ronnie, it's not for everybody.
No.
Because it can get out of hand.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I mentioned that in the book. You have to be careful because when we used it, I'll give an example of what happened. When we had seen the medium about 25 years ago, 27 years ago, I think it was, we did all that. And Philip and I, we didn't have an Ouija board. You can get one. You could make one, but you needed a bit of board. So what we did was we wrote letters, the alphabet A to Z, and we cut them out and put them along the table.
Yeah.
But the trouble is, when we used the planchette, the blasted things would keep slipping off the desk. It was a makeshift Ouija board. Anyway, it was bringing through Susan, one of our wonderful friends, Susan, intellectual. She's an artist. She is like us. She don't have any nonsense. I won't have nonsense. She was watching me and Philip doing this, and Philip and I don't lie. We just use it, and we were purportedly got something through. This force, something, I can't remember exactly what it was saying, but I said to Philip, I've had enough of this. I've had enough. We want proof. It was bringing something out. I said, I want proof. I said to Susan, go outside, get a bit of paper and pen and write something down and put it in your pocket. Just anything, just write it down in your pocket. She knew what we were up to. So she did. She went out and she came back in and she pointed to her pocket. I said, right, to the board. I said, Susan's written something and it's in her pocket. Can you tell us what it is? And it's spelt out first, trickery. I said, no. I said, no. I said, if you were in our position, you'd do the same. What has she written on that piece of paper? I'm not Grandad. I won't have any nonsense. And do you know what? It moved to the DARTHMAUL. Now, at the time, George Lucas, the wonderful George Lucas, had released one of his Star Wars films. I believe it was The Phantom Menace. And there was a character in there called Darth Maul. Well, Susan, I looked at her and she looked white. She pulled it out of her pocket. It was Darth Maul. And it then said satisfied. Well, I was uncomfortable because I thought, well, there's something here, but is it, what it purports to be? And stupidly, I thought at the time it had actually read that piece of paper, but it hadn't. It was connected to the mind. So it connected to Susan's mind. Yeah. So it's using that. So is that the same power of these alleged aliens? I'm not saying they're all alleged. I believe the Betty and Barney Hill case was the one that really did kickstart this because they were the early versions of the Greys, or perhaps the true version of the Greys at the time, has something copied them, something else with us. This is why I mentioned in the book, I'm not saying every kind of thing is based on this copycat. What I'm stating is that we might have more with us than we think, Incidentally, I do believe the Roswell crash. I do believe that actually happened. And that's another thing, when I wrote that in The Digital Demon, that was published a number of years ago, I think, the evidence does sway to the fact that there was a saucer or some kind of ship that crashed, because the military admitted it. They're smart men. They admitted they had in their possession a flying disc or saucer, and then they retracted it. Well, I can understand why they did that, and I think you will understand, because it could cause, or it would cause, enormous consequences, because other countries would turn around and say, well, why on earth are the United States of America so special to have a saucer crash on their land when it couldn't have crashed on Russia or Taiwan or Japan or the UK, and also the people wanted to know exactly what it contained, so, and it makes me laugh. You get these people publishing books, the truth. There is no truth. It's the whole thing's muddied. It doesn't matter how strong they state the evidence is or the narrative. It's completely been muddied, and it's done intentionally so that we can't get to the truth. So when you have someone writing the truth, it's not the truth, it's their own opinions which they believe is the truth.
Very interesting subject, that is. Tell us a bit about the strange paradox of UFO and aliens, and you call it the atomic magician.
Yeah, I've given it that title crudely because it has a kind of 1950s feel, and I like that. I like the 1950s feel.
Yeah.
You see, what I worked out, and this is what I spoke about in February at the group with the wonderful Steve Mira. I love Steve Mira to bits. He's a wonderful gentleman, wonderful man. He's done so much for us, as well as the Awakening team have treated me and Philip like royalty. I cannot thank them enough. They're wonderful. They're the ones who got us out there. And Philip Mantle as well, the wonderful Philip Mantle. He's the one who's published this book as well. There's a number of gentlemen who've helped us, as well as yourself and Paul Sinclair. They've helped us, encouraged us. Paul has been absolutely magnificent. Wonderful gentleman. I get to think about this interaction. So Betty and Barney Hill, which was legitimate, regardless of what some say now, I believe a particular doctor has been criticizing it. He needs to look at the absolute wealth of data accumulated by those people who've researched it, military as well, to know that it did happen. It wasn't a ruse or some kind of act or play. It happened. So we have something that perhaps can copy it. Because if we look back at the 1890s, there are reports of the airships, the bizarre or exotic airships that arrived. I believe one arrived over, was it Judge Proctor's land? Precariously hanging low, seemingly in trouble, and it exploded, destroying his prized flower beds. I shouldn't laugh at that, but it does make you laugh. These people, bless them. You have to think about, they took certain things very seriously, like the judge's prized flower beds, bless him. It ruined them. But the point is, it was exotic and there was a kind of creature on it. You see, and then we develop airships. But these ones were exotic. It's as if we were in line with this thing, or it's in line with us, because airships were built long before that anyway. They're experimenting with them. Balloons as well. I believe the first successful one was done in France, where they put some animals in it and launched it, and it stayed up for a while and came down with the King, was it Louis or something? I've documented the whole thing. I can't remember everything because there's so much to remember. But air flight is not new. It was around in, I think, 1700s, 1600s, or 1700s. The Chinese, I think, were the first ones to develop it by way of kite. They developed the kite. So way back, the kite. So it seemed to me that, and this isn't me, I mean, other researchers have gotten onto this before me, but what I discovered was that these things get more and more advanced as we progress with our science. Aircrafts, we have the saucers. So in the 1950s onwards, they land conventionally. Right? So they land, platform comes out, they welcome the people. And after that, perhaps in the late 60s, I think, people are teleported. Well, what's interesting is that Star Trek came out in the 60s. It was a wonderful, popular series for people. Captain Kirk, we love Captain Kirk. William Shatner, love him. He's our captain. He's my captain. Because we were younger, he was the captain. The others are fantastic, but Captain Kirk was our captain. Anyway, and it got me thinking, because I thought, well, when that came out, is this thing or this force, as was with the Ouija board, cottoned on to the fact that we can, move on a tad. They're no longer met by shaking hands and taken aboard, if that is indeed what happened, were then now transported by way of teleportation. It goes on and on because I think in the 1950s, before Star Trek, even a chap allegedly was taken up by one of these sources on, oh God, I've written it, I can't remember his name. He was hauled up quite grossly by a tendril that dropped from the saucer and dragged him up. And I think there was a colonel with him, major or a colonel, who witnessed it. And this thing took him, and he was found dead a few days later. They found him. I won't tell you the disgraceful state of his body, what they found. I think you can imagine. We could only look at the cattle mutilations to realise, the poor soul, how he was discovered. If it did happen, I believe it did. People say that, it's fake. Well, no, you can say that about anything then. You can say the whole thing, they've got nothing. This is the trouble with this subject. We get nothing, virtually nothing. There's no proof. And that's the whole point. It's like the werewolves, the dogmen that are reported of Bigfoot. It seems to pop in and out. It can't stay in our environment for too long. And I think there's reason behind it. Hence the atomic magician, the atomic structure. This thing can create or build things. Not everything. I mean, I believe that they're genuine UFOs coming from perhaps outer space or, as I suspect, interdimensional. But I think this thing is interdimensional as well. We have something with us, I believe. Something very nasty.
Exactly, I think so. Mel's got a question for you. Message for Ronnie. Have you ever experienced out-of-body experience? Either you or Philip?
No, I can't. I've tried it. I've tried that, and I've never done it. I can't do it. I can't. God knows I've tried, because I've read the books. What was the author? I'm sorry. Forgive me, I can't remember his name. He wrote about a series of them. Philip's reading them at the moment, actually. I can't remember the author's name. I don't think the book's here. It's not. I read them, but I've never been out of my body, never experienced that at all. The only thing I experienced was when I saw the alleged aliens in 1982. I don't believe they were aliens at all. People would say that's out of the body, but I didn't feel like I was leaving the body. I was just taken up into something. So no, I've never had that experience, an out-of-body experience. I don't know about Philip. I think he has. I think Philip has, but I have not.
What about the spaceman ideology?
Yes, yes.
Set a pattern. Is it setting a pattern about it?
To a degree, but it can't. You see, this is what I also discussed at the Awakening team with the group, that the Greys, let's take them for an example, a popular extraterrestrial alien force that people report very widely, the Greys. It struck me as very, very strange when I illustrated some of them in the past. They weren't brilliant. I've got to improve on them, actually. There are some fantastic renderings of them by people, I must say, by artists. Incredible renderings of them. Brilliant, brilliant. They all look different. And one thing that I came to appreciate, and which I've written in the Illusions, is the fact that they don't seem to hold the same kind of look. And it reminded me of artificial intelligent art, AI art. Now, AI art, it can't reproduce the same picture twice. Nothing is ever the same yet. I dare say perhaps will be able to. Uses a platform of art. Yeah. Okay, so it reminded me of this. So when people see them, they're slightly different and they won't be the same. So is this thing doing something similar as our computers do with AI art? It's food for thought, isn't it? You see, because they change. And one man stated to me, that is not how they look. When I had released this picture, these images are done of the Greys, And I said, well, perhaps you might wonder as to why. And again, you see, you'll have people attacking this because they're so adamant that the creatures that they have seen are very personal to them. I'm not going to knock them for that. If they wish to believe that, it's fair enough. I'm not going to tread on any toes here. These are my own opinions. I must make it clear. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Okay? But these are my opinions. But it does hold, it stands firm to me that this is the same. And the werewolves and Bigfoot. And we go on and on, the plethora of absolute, unequivocal, absolute magnitude of these things reported are all different. They were not set in stone in the 50s. They weren't set in stone in the 60s. They were set in stone, not during Close Encounters. It was set in stone through Whitley Strieber's book Communion. That picture of the grey on there invokes something. Was this the very thing that it required, this force, to actually set itself in stone? That people would believe that they were seeing aliens when it was something else, perhaps completely darker. We don't know, but it's an interesting hypothesis nonetheless.
It is, yeah. Excuse me a minute. Rebecca's got a question.
Yeah.
Ronnie, what are your thoughts on being something like a prime directive? Thank you.
A prime directive?
Yeah.
Well, there's something. There's definitely something that's some kind of agenda or some kind of reason for interaction. And the one thing I can think of, firstly, and I think it's logical to assume, is fear. You get these people saying, oh, I'm quite used to them. I don't think you'll ever be used to them. If you see them appearing in your room at night, you're going to be friendly to them and say, oh, hello. Hang on a minute, I'll go get a cup of tea. I'm sorry. I don't mean to sound very rude here, but the point is you're terrified by them. And we move on to the reptilians as well. They change, they differ. The amount of reports of them are phenomenal, as well as the greys. But they all differ. And, some of the greys, let's take them for an example, these popular cult aliens, some of them are telling people that, that the world is going to be destroyed. There's always fear, there's destruction, there's wars. And others then come along and express their concerns for it. It's like the 1950s, the aliens, and I mentioned this again and again, they kept harping on about atomic warfare then, right? And they did nothing. Or people say, well, they shut down a number of silos. They may well have done, but it's an example. That's all it was. They didn't permanently shut them down. With their clout, they could knock out the whole global nuclear arsenal. They could do it. They haven't. This is where it sniffs suspect to me. So then you move on to the 90s with the greys, and then it became very fashionable or in vogue for an environmental concern. And they did again nothing. So it goes on, and then they're showing people so much. I wonder if this is created as a prime directive, I like that word, to confound everyone so that we cannot form a coherent pattern or picture to what this force is actually doing. It keeps making us look this way or that way, not this way. So what's interesting about this as well? I've seen quite a number of UFOs. Now, they're not massive. When you take into effect the lifespan now of me, 55, if I had reported them in a radio show within an hour, it seemed like a lot, but it really isn't, because you're looking at this from years, all right? You think of that. You think on that itself. These other people, what they've reported, and what they've reported, it's completely, absolutely phenomenal. So we can't gauge exactly what this force is doing, but it seems to change all the time. It tells us different things, but we're not allowed to look in a certain way. Now, what's interesting is the fact I have not seen any more UFOs, nothing, since 2000, I think it was 16. I've seen nothing. Is it because I've seen nothing? Is it because we have chipped away a portion, perhaps a little piece of the truth that is deception? And they will know, or it will know, that if I see the greys, I would question them. I'll question them because I'll think, I won't believe that's them. That's not them. There's something behind them. There's something else. We don't know what it is, but there's something else. So the atomic magician, as I call it, the 1950s tongue-in-cheek thing, refers to it as actually creating these things rather than being an absolute race from a star system. Some of them seem to say that they know what planet they come from, what vehicles they use, what their leader is. Oh dear, spare me that. Don't even go down that road. I don't believe any of that nonsense. But there is something with us. It's very dark, and it's quite different. I think we'll be shocked. Do you know, it reminds me of a series I saw. This is interesting. It all goes back to a television series I saw in the 2000 or 1998. I think it was 1998. BBC had done it, called Invasion Earth. They did this small science fiction series called Invasion Earth, where an alien had come to the Earth, bless him, in the Second World War. He crashed, and they captured him, thinking first he was part of Adolf Hitler's force, but they realized he was from outer space. And basically what it is, he was trying to warn the humans, or trying to tell them that you think this war's bad. You've got something else coming. It's from I think it was the fourth dimension, the NDs, they called them. And what these were later on in the 90s, or whatever it was, when it was based the future from them, this interdimensional force basically coming to apprehend the world. And they were horrible, like spiders, interdimensional things. It reminds me of that in a funny sort of way, where they couldn't kill them because they were like basically not part of our physics. They could bypass it through this higher dimension, which would give them the advantage. But it reminds me of that. There's something very dark about it, and this is what makes me laugh. Is that all my experiences have mostly been negative, and what people state then, they all use everything to batter you or to try and knock you down with it. And basically saying it's because you're negative. I was never negative when I was a teenager. I was happy. I was a happy soul. I didn't ask for this to happen. I didn't ask to see them. I didn't want to see them. I'm not interested in them, but it's forced upon you. And later on, as you get older, you want to question. Of course you will. You want to know what they were, but we're not going to know. Not yet. This is the thing. You see, this is the thing, because it knows you cannot gauge what it is. And so in my case, when I saw the doctors, as I call them, and their horrific Cheshire cat, all they were doing, I think all this thing was doing, is using mind games, abduction. And then you have people stating, they've seen flying saucers, they're real, they're analysing the earth. Well, some of them might be, but not all. I don't believe that at all. And then we move on then to the situation of the cattle injuries. I'll say that politely. The injuries, what the hell's that all about? It's so confusing. And what it's done, what it has successfully done, is allowed us to pigeonhole everything. So it's all separate, it appears separate. When are we actually, and Paul Sinclair knows about this anyway, we are looking at more or less a single box that contains this thing. That's why I think Skinwalker Ranch, and I stated this in Illusions, that's why I stated that it's a playground for this force, because it knows it's attracted interest, and so it's going to play along. You're seeing men coming from other dimensions. You see wolves in trees. My goodness, this is something else. A trickster, an atomic magician, as I can call it, So, and the book itself, I must say that the book, that the Illusions was, I'm going to say it, the hardest book I've ever written. It was very hard. And even when
you were saying so, Ron, it took you 3 years to write it. What's the science? What's the science around it then?
Theories, research. I mean, James Fox was lovely. He was a sweetheart. He allowed me to use his documentation of the demonic-looking aliens. I come to a conclusion about that, but he allowed me to use all the material from his film, so I've got slides of it as well in there. And Martin Groves, the deputy sheriff who saw the werewolves 30 years ago, but recommended that he did not speak out about it then. A very respected man. Him and his mate saw them. The land between the legs. Oh, yeah, he saw them. He saw the werewolves. He saw them. And you see, so it goes on and on. And they may not agree with this. But as I said, it's only a hypothesis and nothing more.
Question from Stargazer. Ronnie, for all the negative things we experience, do you believe they are positive beings and forces?
Yeah, I do. Betty and Barney, they weren't horrible to them when they were seized by the aliens, the genuine Greys. Genuine. They performed more, and it would make sense, a medical situation where they were interested in them. So, yes, they weren't horrible. Betty was the stronger of the two because she tried to negotiate with the leader to have something. She wanted to take something from the journal. When he realized the implications, as the people at Roswell did when that ship crashed, they changed it, they twisted it. No, you can't have it. We're not letting you have that. So she kicked up a fight. So there is positive. I think in a way, although it was horrifying for them at the time, later on I think Betty more so gained a greater insight into something so, in a way, beautiful, that we are not alone, that there are things out there that perhaps do have our interests at heart, albeit limited. But yes, I think also the spiritual aspect. I think there's positive with the spiritual aspect, depending on what you preach and what you believe. It's a state of mind, you see, state of mind. That's why I think this darker force is connected to us from the cradle to the grave, and it selects certain people, not for their gullibility, that would be insulting, but for some kind of reason. I've yet to determine. Do you know what's interesting about that? Even before I knew about cattle mutilations, didn't know anything about it, not much about UFOs, when we used to visit Rendlesham Forest about 25 years ago. Susan can attest to this. We went there one night. We'd been there 35 times. Used to go on our own at night. Took us a couple of hours to get there. Set up camp and that. But one night we were in the woods and we had to go to, the loo. And we had a picnic blanket there with our sandwiches. And I can't remember if it was after midnight or just before midnight. So we went off. There's no one there. There's nothing. There's the middle of the woods. And 10 minutes later, we came back and there was a dead rat and a dead rabbit on the rug. They were placed in a perfect circle from nose to tail. This is distinctive, nose to tail. Yeah. And, the brain does some really weird things, because the thing that I kept thinking was that they had a scrap and died there. That's the first thing that entered my head when I realized that was utter nonsense. Because Susan said they'd been placed there, then it hit you. And when you stand there and it's silent, you're looking round, thinking someone's here, someone's put them there, something or someone has put them there. They're dead. They were on the corner of the rock. It put me off my supper, actually. She filmed it on one of the old camcorders. We didn't have digital then. It was one of the tape cassette ones.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it was. We're still trying to find this, and she hasn't just misplaced it or lost it, but we're going to try and find it. I believe it will turn up somewhere, and I can show the film of that. And I didn't check to see if they had holes in their heads or things like that, respectfully put. We moved them off, but they were dead, so someone had planted them. How could someone find a dead rat and a dead rabbit with a space of 10 minutes and put them neatly in it? And what's a circle? What does that mean? From head to tail. I've never forgotten it. I didn't go back there for years afterwards. It did the job. It horrified me because I thought there was someone there, but it's dead quiet, and that's even more disconcerting.
I know Derek used to tell me about that as well. I can remember him going down with his brother one night, and he said, I saw these big creatures coming towards me and everything, and he said, that stopped me going down for ages. I was told not to go by Brenda Butler, and I went. And he said it frightened me. And he didn't go back for a year.
Yeah, it's there's also another incident that happened because we went there quite a lot, and I didn't even know about werewolves then. Not really. I didn't think they were real because it was all hushed up then, wasn't it? No one really spoke about it. But now it's all coming
That's
out. But
true.
we were walking. It's always at night, walking along. I can't remember which part it was. It was near one of the bunkers, and Susan was with us, and we heard this great big thud. And you could feel, Susan will attest to this, you could feel the ground shudder. It was a thud. It's as if something had dropped off something and landed on the ground. And I'll never forget that we started quickening our pace, and Susan was laughing, but she wasn't laughing because I was horrified. It was the nervous. She was nervous. She wanted to get the hell out of there, and we just got the hell out of there. There's something very strange happening there. I don't know always if location is key, is mind is key. Mind is
I think
key. So we were
location.
we were
I
going there
think
for a reason.
location is key to some of these places.
Well, yeah, I mean that, but
Location.
to me, it's mind. I mean, we weren't even thinking about werewolves or Bigfoot, but we had
No, you wouldn't be. No.
this huge thud, and it was disconcerting, and the whole ground shook. And I thought, my God, what the hell was that? Let's get the hell out of here. That was a long time ago. But these little things that you recall, I mean, I'm not an expert on Rendlesham Forest. I don't go down that road. It's nothing to do with me. Renda Butler and the others, they're the pros on it, not me. I don't go into the actual subject itself, but only reporting what I had seen there at the time when we visited the place. So very strange, especially those animals left on the corner of the road.
I know.
That was really horrible.
Alex has only just come back in chat room, so I don't think he heard you before. Are you aware of any past lives, if any, when you told us about Egypt and all that?
Yes, I had past life regression. Again, it was done about 27 years ago. I published it in a book it was released by Capel-Ban. It's out of print now. It was published by Capel-Ban in 2012. The book was called Twin Souls. It was, I think I've re-narrated it in The Digital Demon. I saw 4 past lives. 4 of them, and one of them was indeed Egypt. I was not a pharaoh or anything like that. I was always, I think the highest I got was one of Pharaoh's advisors or part of his court, an old man, if you could call them old then, lived to an advanced age, but a counsellor or something like that, with a group of others having to inspect something for him on behalf of him. He wasn't privileged. He didn't grace the area himself, and it's a good job he didn't, because something happened there. But I had 4 alleged past life regressions. One was Rome, in the Colosseum, and one where I was a Roman soldier. Actually, I actually look quite dishy as a Roman soldier there. I was quite a stud. I could see myself. Yeah, I thought, wow, look at that, look at you, wow, good, look at you with more uniform on. My God, I got killed. So it was very interesting. And the last one was very strange. It was to do with the Mayans, Kukulkan, their deity they worshipped. Kukulkan, however you pronounce the feather serpent, the feather serpent. I believe I saw something of that. So I had 4, but I've had no more. One of them was certainly Egypt, but I wasn't Anubis then, as I said about Pearl. This was some watching or witnessing the completion of a building. As something went wrong, it collapsed, and we were there in the midst of it. As I said, it's a good job Pharaoh wasn't there. He couldn't attend. He was busy entertaining, I think, or something, or doing something else. But it's very interesting, fascinating, and the way it happened, the way I saw it, the interludes for each one was very, very interesting. Saw these clouds moving over when the death of myself firstly. You see the clouds afterwards. It was that Panavision. You see a full scale version. There's no sound. There's no sound.
No sound at all.
No sound. There's a film. It's like seeing a silent film. But it was fascinating with Pearl again. Pearl. I was dubious about doing this, and she convinced me that you can do it, Ronnie. She was interested to see. She wanted to see Atlantis because she said Philip and I had been on Atlantis when I first met her. We were sisters on Atlantis. Yeah, sisters. Not when it went down. This was something called the golden era, so it's probably like our 1980s.
Right.
There were a chain of islands, big islands that were quite advanced. I think we were sisters, so she wanted to see that, but it never came through. I couldn't. Nothing of that came through. Not Atlantis. But I think I mentioned that in the Digital Demon as well.
I know. I don't think anybody's asked you. Have you always been an artist then?
Yes, I developed an interest through the mythical creatures at school. It was our religious teacher, would you believe, that used to tell us tales of the mythical gods of Olympus, the griffins and all that. And I developed an absolute fascination for them, and I respect for them. I respect for the gods of the past. So that's what got me into it, really. The mythology of, the gods of Olympus. Clash of the Titans comes to mind now. Ray Harryhausen, yeah, the wonderful, marvelous master, the stop motion genius, Ray Harryhausen. I actually have two of his dinosaurs. Philip and I have two of his dinosaurs. They're exclusive collector's models.
Ooh.
One from 1 million years BC and Gwanji. We actually have Gwanji, but I do tend to think that the 1 million years BC, the dinosaur's much more better than Gwanji, although I did love Gwanji. I thought he was one of, and in popular to contrary belief, he was not a Tyrannosaurus Rex, he was an Allosaurus. I think they both were. I think both Allosaurus, he based it on. So, yeah,
right.
so I have them from the Ray Harryhausen, from the wonderful, wonderful, brilliant man. Lovely. You see what he does. You see what these people do, some of them. They're not all with crowns, sitting with crowns on their heads. They really, really help and inspire. Kenneth Johnson, the creator of V.
Down to earth people.
Right? Yeah, Kenneth Johnson, Kenny, the creator of V. He allowed me to use some of his material for my Digital Demon. I wrote to him. I've written to Kenny a number of times. V, the mini-series he did, the first part of it. He didn't do all of it. He did the first 3, I think, and then the other took over and did another 2, the ending of it. But you see, again, there again, you've got these wonderful people who inspire you and say, yeah, that's okay, Ronald, you can use that, or Ronnie, you can use that, lovely people. There are some that do not. And think, yes, there's some I could mention, but I will not mention. One of them's very famous. Yeah, no, I'm not going to say anything. My lips are sealed. I'm a gentleman. He was quite, well, let's just leave that, shall we?
Exactly. So let's talk about your new book. When's it coming out?
Illusions, it comes out on July the 1st. It's published by Philip Mentros Flying Disc Press. I did a lot of research for that. Basically, the past as well, the past incidents, the airships, as I mentioned. And Alan Godfrey very kindly allowed me to use a piece of his material as well. The wonderful Alan Godfrey, who's been encouraging to me and Philip. He's an encouraging man, a lovely soul, brave man. Absolutely love that man. He's allowed me to use some of his material from his own book, Alan Godfrey, his book, which I've got in there. I'm very proud to say that I have also my pictures in there. Who or What Were They by Alan Godfrey. Now, if you want to read a good book, I should buy Alan Godfrey's book, Who or What Were They? He's a police officer, respected police officer. Right. And something else that happened to him as well, which you'll find interesting, involving a gentleman. I wouldn't say it's murder, something else, but you need to read that book by Alan Godfrey because he's a gentleman and he's a sound chap, and God knows he's so respected.
Yeah, he is, yeah. Just a question, we just got time for this.
Yeah.
This is from Lee. Do you think, Ronnie, people are born to be an artist?
No, I don't. I think it can be taught like anything. Yeah, I mean, I know I sat in circle for 4 years, but I could get nothing through for the psychic stuff. But was that me holding back? It might well have been. It could have been. You can train to be an artist. You can train your mind to be anything. You can learn anything. You can be anything if you just put your heart and soul into it. So no, you're not born an artist. Some people they're born with the artistic talent. Let's make no mistake of that. But for the majority, I'm self-taught because my first pictures were crude. They were terrible. But with practice, I got better and better. So no, more than not, you just teach yourself. And I think it's the best thing to do. Don't go to college or university. You learn yourself because you've got no pressure. Then you can make mistake after mistake. It's like learning to program computers, which I did. I just picked it up. I taught myself as well as the school. The wonderful teachers at Stockwood High School, some of them anyway, were wonderful. They helped me along, like the mentors of Boris and Julie Bell, Boris Feligio and Julie Bell, were lovely, and the wonderful Ray Harrison. Even though we heard from him only once, it was enough. And sadly, it was shortly before he passed. So, but magnificent, magnificent people in the world that give you encouragement, and God bless them. I tell you, because I won't forget them.
Exactly. Well, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the show. It's been good as always with you, Ronnie.
Thank you, Bob.
It's always it's great that we have people in the chat room to give questions. It's always nice.
Thank you to them too, and thank you for your questions. They're wonderful questions. They're great. I love it.
Yeah, I do as well. It helps the show go along nicely.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure to be on there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, where can they get the other books of yours?
They're on Amazon. They're ones that were published by Capel Bannon. There's a number of publishers. I think they're out of print now. They don't last long. I mean, they stay in print for a few years and then they move on to other things. It's like everything, nothing lasts forever. But The Digital Demon certainly is on Amazon. You can get that as hardback, paperback, Kindle, or an audiobook. That refers to the past lives as well. And I battle in that, trying to work out what we're dealing with. As I said, is only my own opinions. They are not enforced to correct people. People are entitled to their own opinions. Have your free minds. Think what you believe. That's fair enough. Okay?
Thank you for that.
Okay.
And have a lovely weekend.
Thank you. And you too. And everyone else as well. Have a nice weekend. I've got to work Saturday, so...
Oh, I know Ollie's up this weekend. Paul's gone out with Ollie tonight to Bempton.
Ollie, that's fantastic. Yeah.
I think she's over for about a few days, so I might see her tomorrow night at Bempton.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. You take care.
You too. Thank you.
Regards to Philip.
I will indeed.
And I'll catch up with him very soon about coming on show.